composer, and that's William Grant Still. I did know about Still before these concerts. I had actually performed this next piece some 20, oh God, 30 years ago? I've lost track. But in the mid-90s, I was fortunate to become one of the artistic ambassadors of the U.S. With a violinist named Tim Schwartz after I had graduated from Peabody. And we were sent on this big tour around the Middle East and by the State Department and Southeast Asia, playing in Pakistan and Syria and Egypt, and all these places that had revolutions just after we left. So I'm not sure if it was what we did is that we were supposed to play American music, and so we were looking for interesting things, and we had discovered this piece by William Grant Still, and his daughter, Judith Still, I think she's still alive, out in Flagstaff, Arizona, is sort of the gatekeeper of all music by William Grant Still, and she'll send you out his music and always wants to find out exactly where you're playing his music. So I had to tell her about all these concerts we're doing, and I told her about this trip that we took, and she was so happy that her father's music was being played in Syria and Laos and Sri Lanka. So it's a wonderful piece of music, and I was glad that we could get Emanuel to do this. Still in his lifetime was fairly well known. He was known as the Dean of African-American classical composers, and he was the first in many things. He actually beat out Florence Price to be the first African-American to have a symphony performed in 1930. The Rochester Philharmonic performed his Afro-American Symphony, which again, you can hear on YouTube. It is a really powerful piece of music. And so he was the first African-American to have a symphony performed. He also was the first African-American to conduct a major United States orchestra. He conducted the Los Angeles Philharmonic at the Hollywood Bowl in 1936, which is actually fairly long ago. But it took another 20 years he was the first to conduct in the Deep South. He conducted the New Orleans Philharmonic in 1955. And he was also the first to have an opera produced by a major company. The New York City Opera did his Troubled Island in 1949 with a libretto by Langston Hughes. He had a really interesting life, born in Mississippi, but actually grew up in Little Rock, Arkansas, where Florence Price was. He actually was about 8 years younger and studied with the same piano teacher that Florence Price had studied with. His mother really wanted him to be a doctor, so he went off to Wilberforce University to study medicine for a while, but realized that wasn't what he wanted to do. He could play many different instruments, all the string instruments, flute, oboe, clarinet. Oboe became his kind of major instrument that he sort of performed a lot with. Ends up going to Oberlin College, Oberlin in Ohio, one of the first conservatories to take in black musicians. Graduates there, goes to fight in World War I for a little bit in 1918. Then he comes back and he actually ends up in Memphis at the time that W.C. Handy is down there. W.C. Handy is kind of known as the father of the blues. He went around listening to all the blues down there, trying to codify it, write it down so that it could be kept. And so he was working with William Grant Still, who would go out in these rural areas and listen to these blues and try to write them down. He then moves in the 1920s to Harlem, and in the 1920s, Harlem was the real mecca of great culture, the Harlem Renaissance. He got to meet all the great artists and writers and musicians. He actually played in the band for the first all-black musical, Shuffle Along, in 1921, written by U.B. Blake and Noble Sisson, and he was playing oboe in that one. Then he eventually gets back, moves out to Hollywood. That's when he conducts out there, and he starts writing for films. He wrote for the film Pennies from Heaven in 1936, starring Bing Crosby, 1937 film The Lost Horizon, and several others. So a kind of remarkable character. We have a wonderful quote from him about his symphony, the Afro-American Symphony. He said, "I knew I needed to write a symphony. I knew it would be an American work, and I wanted to demonstrate how the blues, so often considered a lowly expression, could be elevated to the highest musical level." And he does that as well with this piece, incorporates some of the blues in it. It's in 3 movements, and what's fascinating about it is that the 3 movements are all based on different works of art by friends of his from the Harlem Renaissance. And so the first movement is based upon a sculpture by Richmond Barté called African Dancer from 1933. This is actually the first work of art by an African-American taken in at the Whitney Museum. I was just there and I saw it. It's a great piece. And William Grant Still sort of brings this statue to life, whirling around in this kind of kind of perpetual motion. Although in the middle it stops for a while and we get a real nice sort of slow blues. Then it picks up and it ends really exciting. It's a wonderful first movement. There's a gorgeous second movement, again, in kind of the spiritual tradition. This is based upon a crayon drawing by Sergeant Claude Johnson of a mother and her child. And then the last movement is based on a sculpture by a woman artist, Augusta Savage, called Gamin, or Street Urchin. And for this movement, you'll hear a little sort of walking bass boogie-woogie sort of in the left hand. So we hope you enjoy it. Please welcome Emanuel Borowsky. Thank you.